Hi, I'm Chip Rogers, and welcome to the AAHOA Educational Experience. Joining me today, three very special guests as we talk about a subject that some might consider a dirty word, but I think by the end of the show you'll think differently, and that is the term and the word lobbying. With me this week is our National Chairman, AAAHOA Patel. Thank you for being with us. And Bruce Patel, a Director at Large, and Anurag Varma, who serves with Patton Boggs, one of the nation's premier lobbying firms. And on that note, we'll start with you, Anurag. People hear the word lobbyist, and the media over the years has turned this into I guess, as Bruce said off camera, almost a negative connotation. But in reality, everybody's a lobbyist in their own way. From the guy who hands out the checks to the members of Congress, to your spouse at home lobbying you to do something one way or the other. Everybody lobbies because it's just somebody expressing their opinion and what they'd like to see happen, correct?
Absolutely. Lobbying is an age-old tradition in the United States. It's actually not just a tradition, it's a profession in Washington, D.C. and in state capitals and capital cities across the country. And it hails from when members of the U.S. Congress used to stay in the Willard Hotel, and people who wanted to talk to the member of Congress about an issue would wait in the lobby for that member of Congress to come down, and that was the term lobbying. Since then, it refers to the art and also the science of communicating your message so that you can affect or influence or have your voice on policies, laws, regulations that are made in this country, and communicate that to people who make those decisions. And it very much is a profession, and I'm a lobbyist, and I'm regulated, and everything I do is disclosed. And the reason it is a profession, just like if you're going to deal with the IRS, you hire an accountant. If you're going to deal with the court system, you hire a lawyer. And if you're dealing with the Congress, you should make sure you know how to lobby. And it's actually much more democratic than either the accountant or being a lawyer, because I can't do my job unless the client, for example, in the case of AAHOA, unless the hotel owners also get out there and join me in three key components of lobbying, which is education, coming up with the issues that we need to be communicated, infrastructure, finding ways to communicate them, and AAHOA has lobby days, which we'll talk about, legislative days, and access. It is the relationships that the AAHOA members have in their local communities that allow us the access to communicate the message.
Alkesh, I want to follow up. He made a great point about education, because I think that's one component, or obviously the most important component of lobbying that people often overlook when they're just thinking about the term and the act of lobbying. You've been to many a congressman's office, and I would imagine that most of the time, talking to the member of Congress, you're really educating them about your industry, your personal stories about what is happening with your hotels, and how Congress can help, or in some cases not harm, what it is you're trying to do.
Absolutely, and that's the key thing, is when the congressmen and the advisors they have, and as you all know, when there is a bill that goes through Congress or Senate, there's thousands of pages of it, and off that, you need to have personal experiences that you need to talk to your congressman to make a decision on. And as all these years, as we have gone through, a perfect example of it is the lobbying that we did for the ADA. The ADA rule that is currently that DOJ has given us extension on. As an industry with AHLA and with AAHOA, when we go up there, when we go to Anurag's office and with their help, what we are lobbying for is to go out and talk to the right people, to educate them on how these law or how this bill can affect our industry. And you go and tell them that why these doesn't make sense, and especially for these DOJ's regulation on the pool lift. We went up there and we said, look, the regulation, we want to comply with it. But the common sense approach is what we're talking about, and then we as an industry and the owners running the hotels, we want to comply with it, but have a law or have a bill that helps us comply with that. and you go and explain your situation to them. And in a lot of cases, and you saw the perfect example of it, we got a 2 extension because of the industry leaders got together, the owners got together, and was able to explain to the congressmen, senators, and DOJ that these doesn't make sense. We do want to comply with it, but as the owners, these doesn't make sense. And they saw the value of ownership giving their voice, and that's how we got these 2 extensions. So that's one example of lobbying, is that you lobby for the right things and why it makes sense. And if they understand and they think that it does make sense, then you will have a bill that will, favor you, or that will have things in it that make sense to the industry.
Bruce, to follow up on Alkesh's point, which he made very well, when you're talking to a member of Congress, and you've sat there in their offices, they unfortunately we almost force them to try to be experts in all things because there's so many interests that are going to come before them for some sort of decision. And you, as a member of the hospitality industry, can give them information, lobby them, and give them things they would never otherwise understand because they don't run hotels. And that's why really the art of lobbying is extremely important to the entire process, and you've seen it firsthand.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing just to get an appointment, but it's with a congressman or a senator, but it's a second thing to go in there and be able to give your actual story. With the issue of online travel companies, for example, when we're lobbying for what we feel is a more fair approach, where they should pay their own taxes and like the way we do, a lot of congressmen were actually shocked at the actual what they were trying to accomplish, what the OTCs were trying to accomplish. And not till some of us actually went down, sat down with them for 5, 10, 15 minutes and explained the common sense approach to this, did they then finally say, light bulb, I understand now, because I, like you said, they have too many things on their desk, and until somebody from the hospitality industry goes and actually explains it, sometimes they just don't understand a common sense approach.
And we need to wrap up this segment. We've got a couple of minutes left, Anurag, but I think what I have found through the way people look at lobbying is 180 degrees different from what it actually is, because the most important ingredient in lobbying is actually honesty. Because if you're a lawmaker and you're meeting with someone and they continue to give you bad information or wrong information or deceive you in any way, you're going to stop meeting with them. So I mean, it's critical for a lobbyist actually to be very honest and provide very factual information.
Absolutely. Credibility of the person giving their story ranges everything from making it personal. The member of Congress cares more about what's happening on Route 1 in his state, right in his district, than he does about what's happening in Washington, D.C. And that part of the story needs to be communicated. And then when you're conveying the problem, the issue, the concern, it has to be based upon what's really happening. And what you'll see is, win or lose, the member of Congress may say, oh, well, thank you for telling me that. I still don't believe I'm going to vote that way on the issue. You'd be surprised the amount of times a year later a related issue comes up, the congressman calls you and says, I remember you came in, we didn't agree on that issue, but a related issue has come up. Can you tell me a little bit more about how this works at your hotel? And it is this type of relationship, this give and take, where there's not just trust, but there's trust on the substance and the substantive level that can be a really valuable way to create good, fair, proper laws in this country. And that's what we want to be a part of, especially where it affects our industry.
We've got about 30 seconds left before we go to the break, but Alkesh, a perfect example was recently. AAHOA has been on Capitol Hill for quite some time, talking to members about financial issues, and then all of a sudden the pool lift issue comes up, and who does Congress turn to come testify but AAHOA?
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to go and tell the true story and your true example that makes sense to the congressman when it comes to for him to make a decision on that particular issue.
All right, we do have to take a quick time out. We're talking about the issue of lobbying, probably a little more interesting than you thought. We'll be back with my guest coming up right after this. Welcome back to the AAHOA Educational Experience. Again, I'm Chip Rogers. With me, my guest this week, very special guest, National Chairman Alkesh Patel, Director at Large Bruce Patel, and Attorney Anurag Barma. We'll start with you again, Anurag. You had mentioned earlier in the show three key components. Access, which we've talked about a lot with the PACs. Education, which is critical about giving proper and accurate information and helping educate members and lawmakers. But you cannot leave out infrastructure, because without infrastructure, the access and the education don't really matter.
Absolutely. It's about delivering. This is, if you have a message and you've thought about it and it is accurate and honest, and you have someone that you want to communicate it to, the thing that's missing in there is how to communicate it and how to communicate it effectively. And then the flip side of the coin is when the member of Congress, the senator, the state representative, when they are ready to dig into an issue, whether it be something that you've spoken to them before or not, to have the ability for them to get the message back to you and for you to get an answer to it. And over my 7 years of being affiliated with AAHOA's political participation, this is something that has grown by leaps and bounds, is the ability of AAHOA to use various mechanisms, and whether it be opportunities to convene in Washington, whether it be letter writing campaigns, email campaigns, whether it be responses to surveys. And when AAHOA does these surveys and AAHOA members get them in their email or their mailboxes, I hope everyone understands how valuable it is to fill them out, because that information is being communicated back. But having the infrastructure in place is a monumental step in going from just a group of people who want to do something to actually being a major national association. And it's just really heartening to see AAHOA building a first-class infrastructure on the legislative component there.
Before I go to Bruce, I want to follow up just quickly, because you bring up a really good point. A lot of times when we think about lobbying, and we've talked about it here in this context, we begin to think, well, that means I've got to go to my congressman's office and sit down in front of them and speak with them. And in reality, writing letters, making phone calls, and emails is just as much an important part of lobbying as anything else.
Absolutely. The interesting example, not necessarily related to AAHOA directly, but a few years ago when you had this debate over comprehensive immigration reform and about legalizing migrant workers, and the debate was 50-50. People weren't sure. Maybe it would pass, maybe it wouldn't pass. And some of the groups that were against that legislation mounted a phone call campaign. And tens of thousands of phone calls were made to each office of the 100 United States senators, and it completely shifted the view of that legislation, and that legislation failed. And it was that level of advocacy of a phone call campaign that made that switch. So yes, absolutely.
And Bruce, Anurag talks about it having this national presence, and that's one of the good things about AAHOA, is it's split up into these regions. How important it is for every one of those regions to be actively engaged, not only in the PAC that we had talked about in earlier shows, but also in the overall lobbying effort or the interaction with your lawmaker effort.
Well, sometimes you're as strong as your weakest link. So if we're building our political machine here, I think it's extremely important that we get everyone involved, east to the west coast, because we want our congressmen and women out there to know that we're involved from the east to the west coast, because we represent a large amount of the hotel industry. So I think that it's very important that we all get involved. But infrastructure-wise, like Anurag was saying, we have many legs, and one resource that some of our AAHOA members can go to is our website. It's a pretty sophisticated website where they can actually go to the advocacy center and actually put in their zip code and see who's their congressmen and women in their area. And so I think that would help when we get organized, when we start having an email campaign or Write Your Congressman campaign. I think it's important to know that our members know that we are organized, and our political machine has been growing over the years, and as we continue to grow, their involvement is a critical part of that success.
Absolutely. One of the things that happens now more than once a year are legislative days, and Alkesh, I know some dates have already been secured for legislative days for AAHOA. Tell us about that and how important it is that everyone become actively engaged.
Yeah, every year we have like as a part of our infrastructure, we have a governmental affairs team. We have year in advance. We have already picked a date. We do our annual legislative event when we do our ambassador conference, and then we go and campaign up on the Hill. And that event is happening on September 11, 9/11/2012, and we're already working on. So that is a day we go up on the Hill and we campaign. But the importance of going up on the Hill is not with just 32 board of directors and the ambassadors. When we plan it, AAHOA has infrastructure in place to even take 11,000 members up there. And that's what we want to see. If every one of the member wants to come up there, we can have it up there. So, the day before we go up there and we have at Anurag's office, we actually get everyone in one room and with a position paper. So, with the office puts together with governmental affairs team, office and Anurag's team, we put together a white paper and we put on there that exactly what needs to happen next day. What are the issues that are facing our industry right now, and what is it that we're going to campaign? So, all the members always think that the board is up there, ambassador is up there. They're already doing that. And the reason why, if they write the check for $365, $500 or $1,000 club, that doesn't mean that job is done. They need to be there. Now they are constituents, they're a contributor. So when we go up on the Hill on September, when we do our legislative event, we do our spring legislative event, and then we go every month. So as a board of directors, as ambassadors with lobbying group, every month we are up there. But this is a national event. That's where we want to see more than 200 people. We like to see every contributor to come up that day. So that day they get trained on what is it that exactly happens up there. And so that's why it's very important. When the infrastructure is in place, we need to have numbers also. When you go in your congressman and senator's office, AAHOA and Anurag's office, they do a great job on getting appointments done. So we are up there. We get these are the congressmen and senators. They want to see you because they know that you have been a contributing. They know what AAHOA's views are, and it's important for them to come and hear that. We do a nice legislative event in the evening where we invite all the congressmen and senators. And you get, last year we had almost 30, 40 congressmen and senators. They came down and they spoke to our members. So this is the opportunity where you have one-on-one, you talk to them about your issues. And these are the senators and congressmen from your area. They know your business. So they want to know, how successful you are or what is going on, what is it really impacting, because you're paying tax in their community and you're also paying tax to get this America going. So it's very important, the September 11 for as many members for to be there. And then we do another event, is a spring legislative event, where we do it in March, February, March, we do it in spring also. Same thing, in a smaller group, we go up and campaign on a hill. So AAHOA do these events where importance is, more participation is very important.
And Bruce, the lucky man in the middle, you get to close out the show. I know one of the more amazing reactions I get is for people outside the hospitality industry that don't know what AAHOA is, when you say, we have 11,000 members who own almost 40% of the hotels in the United States. I can't imagine any lawmaker whose ears wouldn't perk up upon hearing that information.
Well, I'll give you an example. Last year, we sat down and met with House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. And when our, at that time, Vice Chairman and our Chairman, Hemant Patel, explained to him that we're 10,000 plus members strong, and we own about close to 35 to 40% of the hospitality industry or the hotels in this United States. His ears perked up and he was shocked. His exact words were, I had no clue that AAHOA was this large. So yeah, it's amazing when we hear those kinds of reactions. But I think it also signifies the importance of getting out there and telling our congressmen and congresswomen and senators how big we actually are, so we can make some impacts to the things that are important to the hospitality industry.
And I don't want to speak for the chairman, but if just 10% of the AAHOA members show up on September 11th, that's going to be quite a sight as they approach Capitol Hill.
That's my goal. And look, Bruce and the team and AAHOA board and Anurag is always ready. So I welcome all the viewers, AAHOA members. This is the date. Mark your calendar. Women, especially, I encourage you guys to be there. Every senator, congressman has come to our conference, and we have gone up there. They have shown and talked about the importance of women being there. So be there, lobbying with us. Chip said 10%. If all of you guys show up, there will be a dream come true. But even 10%, that will be a start. So we'll look forward to see you all.
Absolutely. Well, we are out of time. I want to say thank you to my guests, Anurag Varma, Bruce Patel, and Chairman Alkesh Patel. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I'm Chip Rogers. If you'd like to contact me, very simple, chip@ahoa.com. That's chip@ahoa.com. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again next week.